Tilda is Visible is a story about a woman in her early 50s who wakes up one morning and her little finger has disappeared. And she goes to her doctor who diagnoses her with invisibility. Turns out that's a quite common condition for women over 50. Apparently, there's no cure. So Tilda just must accept that she is disappearing. But she doesn't accept that. And she goes on a journey and the fight of her life to learn how to see herself again. And uh, I mean, that's the story, her learning how to see herself again. I invented it, but I also lived it being a woman of, in my 50s. I think it comes as a bit of a shock to women that generally mid 40s, something shifts, something changes in the way that you're perceived in the world. And I can, uh, there are so many reasons for this and societal reasons which I could go into. But the way that I approach it in the book is about how we actually lose sight of ourselves. And I do think that women in their 40s, they juggle so much at a time that is pivotal hormonally as well. And we talk about that more now, with perimenopause and that. It's a real thing. And we talk about, but 10 years ago, we weren't. And so women who were juggling work and families and all of that, and mix it in with all the hormonal changes, quite often there's unaddressed trauma that comes up at this point in a woman's life. So all of that is just like a sort of explosion of, and women turn around at the other side of it and go, "Oh my God, like no one's no one can see me. No one's listening to me. No one's like, they don't know who they are." And it's really, really common. I wrote Tilda, and after the experience that I went through, and had come out the other side of it, really because of the tools that I weaved into Tilda. So I'd come out the other side of it, and I'd learned how to see myself again. And I thought, how can I share this with other women and my friends and the women around me? So that's where the story came from.
Yeah.
Selma Nesta, named after a dear theatre teacher of mine, actually. Uh, she says that she can cure invisibility and has in fact cured it herself many years before. And so she trains therapists all around the world to cure invisibility. And Tilda's best friend gets her an appointment, actually. And she goes to this therapist, and sort of expects to sit down and have a proper therapy session, talk about any medications she's on and talk about, her childhood and talk about, and start to explore why, maybe talk about her marriage, explore why this was happening to her, and how she could address it. And the first therapy session doesn't go the way she expects at all. This therapist is abrupt and very focused on how Tilda thinks and her inner program, and leaves Tilda with some homework to do. And she introduces her to, it's kind of like another character and sort of character in the novel, Pearl, which is an acronym for Program Everything, Always Repeat Loop. And that is your inner program. So Tilda goes back to her life, now aware of Pearl, of a voice inside her head talking to her all the time. And once that genie is out of the bottle, there's no shoving it back in. Once you become an observer of your internal programs, you either live with them and they're always pretty hideous, or you change them. And when you change them, that can have a real impact on your life. And I guess this is where there's a little bit of a self-help element to Tilda. Um, However, I went through this myself. I actually had my son in a neuroplasticity course and for dyslexia. So I was learning all about neuroplasticity for a while because of this. And then I was thinking, maybe I can kind of incorporate some of this into my own life and my own meditation practice because I'd been meditating for a few years and change how I saw the world and particularly how I saw myself. So these internal programs that we live with, like we would never speak to our best friends this way. And yet all day long there'll be a loop about, negative loops about awful things about ourselves. We look in the mirror and we criticize ourselves. We do something, we tell ourselves how stupid we are. We don't speak to anyone else about like that, but we speak to ourselves like that. So the therapist in Tilda really draws her attention to this inner dialogue and then gives her the tools to change the inner dialogue. And the process of that, when you do that, when you become an observer of your inner thoughts and then change them to be, and this isn't about positive thinking either, it's like genuinely changing neural pathways. Um, when that happens, you begin to see yourself more clearly. I did the first draft of Tilda and I felt like something was missing. And I was in lockdown. Sydney had 2 very long lockdowns, and it was the second one, it was rough. So I was writing the novel, that was my escape from the lockdown, really. But the chunks of it had been written over the years, and I was putting it together, and there's Tilda, and she's very separate to me, and I thought, "Oh, something's not working." And as a writer, there's a little intuitive, like it's a little intuitive thing that I sort of get in my diaphragm when something works or doesn't work. I and then I realized I needed to put more of myself in Tilda. And more of myself because I think that my story isn't that unusual. That's the way that it could resonate with women because actually my story is quite common. So that's when I came up with the idea of Pearl, the inner program. And so I put a lot of my own inner thoughts there. And I weaved in Tilda's childhood and also her marriage, or her ex-husband. And I took elements of my own life and my own thoughts about my life and put that into Tilda. And at the end of it, because I have been working in the book industry for years in Australia, I was too afraid to show it to anyone because I thought people would think I was crazy, because of all of the Pearl, the inner program that I'd put on the page. So it took me about close to a year to actually send it to someone, and I sent it to someone in publishing who I knew was a meditator, and she really liked it, and then she connected me with someone else, and it all happened very quickly after that.